Hi, I'm Lila, 34, a corporate project manager living alone in Raleigh. Every December, I sent money home to keep my family's lights on, literally. Mortgage repairs, groceries, I covered it all. Last Christmas, my mom looked me straight in the eye and said, we all agreed, "You're not welcome this year." I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I just stopped paying for the house they were celebrating in. Turns out, when a family decides you're disposable, it's not anger that sets you free. It's clarity. This is the story of how I walked away and let them finally feel the darkness they thought would never come. My name is Lila. For most of my life, I believed family was supposed to be this unbreakable net that caught you when you fell. I thought it meant warmth, belonging, unconditional love, the kind you saw in holiday commercials or read about in novels. Even when reality contradicted that, I kept believing. I was the reliable one, the fixer, the quiet helper in the background. I paid bills no one else could cover, organized gatherings no one thanked me for, and swallowed silence when words would have burned everything down. That was my role. Or at least, that's what I thought. Then came that December morning. The sky was heavy with clouds threatening snow, and I was sitting at my kitchen table drinking coffee I'd brewed extra strong because I'd been up late wrapping gifts to ship to them. My email notifications buzzed, and for a second my heart lifted, thinking it was the usual Christmas group chat, what dishes people were bringing, who was flying in from where, passive-aggressive reminders from Carlin about labeling serving spoons. But there was nothing, just an empty inbox. I refreshed it once, twice, 3 times, not out of hope, but out of habit. Still nothing. I told myself maybe they hadn't started planning yet. Maybe they were waiting on one last RSVP, but deep in my gut, something curled tight and whispered no. This isn't an accident. I set down my mug, clicked over to our family's shared drive, the one where we uploaded dinner playlists, gift registries, and Carlin's yearly spreadsheet ranking, who brought the most useful food. But the folder was gone. At first, I thought it was a glitch. I checked an old invite link. Access denied. I sat there staring at the screen, numb. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, typing out a short text to Carlin. "Hey, did you take down the family folder?" No response. 38 minutes later, my phone buzzed. Mom. I opened it quickly, thinking surely she'd noticed I wasn't on the email thread. Maybe she'd ask if I was okay. Maybe she'd say she missed me. Instead, it read, "I figured you'd be busy this year. Don't stress about Christmas. No, how are you? No, we missed you last year." Just a line meant to sound caring, but it felt like a lock clicking shut behind me. I didn't reply. I took a screenshot instead, then set my phone face down on the table, the quiet of my apartment pressed against my eardrums. I wasn't crying. I don't cry over things that predictable anymore. But I felt something shift inside me, a clean break like glass, cracking under pressure. I remembered last Christmas. I'd arrived late because a client meeting ran long. I walked in with arms full of carefully wrapped gifts and a tray of cookies I'd baked at 2 a.m. Not a single person looked up. Every chair was filled. I ended up standing at the kitchen counter, eating off a paper plate without a napkin. Someone mumbled, "Look who finally decided to show." I didn't even catch who said it. Didn't matter. They all laughed. Back then, I told myself it wasn't intentional. People get stressed. Plans change. Maybe they just forgot I didn't eat pork. Maybe they forgot I always brought deviled eggs no one acknowledged, but everyone finished. I excused them because the alternative that it was deliberate hurt too much to face. But now, sitting there staring at an empty inbox, it felt deliberate. Like a group decision had been made about me, somewhere behind closed doors. Some digital vote I wasn't invited to join. Later that day, a voicemail came in. I'd just set down a grocery bag with milk celery and a bottle of wine I probably wouldn't open. When I pressed play, her tone was flat, almost rehearsed. The family talked and we just think it might be easier if you don't come this year. It's nothing personal. We all agreed. You know how things get. We all agreed. Not I feel. Not I wish it were different. No sorrow. Just a sentence that sounded like a verdict. I didn't drop the groceries. I didn't scream. I just set the bag down, took off my coat, and replayed it twice. Then I hit save. That night I lay in bed longer than usual. The phone sat face down on my nightstand, the quiet so dense it pressed against my chest. I wasn't crying. I was just still. Completely still. And in that stillness, I asked myself a question I'd never let surface fully before. Why was I still paying for a life I wasn't even allowed to be part of? You see, for the last 3 years, I'd been paying the mortgage on that house. Quietly, consistently. The same house where they celebrated birthdays, anniversaries, baby showers. The same kitchen where they roasted turkeys and iced cakes. The same sunroom I'd refinished so Mum could host her Bible study group in a bright, warm space. I kept them warm. I kept them safe. I kept them together. And all it took for them to cut me out was a silent vote. That was the moment something inside me cracked wide open. Not with rage, but with clarity. They thought my love meant I'd stay no matter how invisible they made me feel. But love without dignity isn't love. It's just endurance. And I realized I'd been enduring my entire life. So I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I didn't even tell them what I was about to do. I just decided that if I wasn't welcome at their table, I would stop paying for their feast. And that was just the beginning. That night after the voicemail, I couldn't sleep. I lay there staring at the hairline crack in my bedroom ceiling, tracing it with my eyes over and over until it blurred into the shadows. My chest felt hollow, like someone had reached in and scooped out everything I used to believe about love, loyalty, and family. It's a strange thing realizing you've been erased, because it never happens all at once. It happens quietly, slowly, like someone dimming a light, one notch at a time, until you're sitting in darkness, wondering when exactly it disappeared. I started thinking back, remembering the small moments that didn't seem connected until now. Like when they changed the family group chat name from Holiday Hysteria to the real ones. Or when I noticed my name missing from the meal sign-up sheet last Thanksgiving. I'd asked Mom about it and she just said, "Oh, we didn't think you'd have time this year." Back then I thought she was protecting me from extra work. Now I realized she was protecting their gathering from my presence. I thought about Colin's snide comments over the years. How every time I offered to bring something, she'd say, "Don't overdo it, Lila. It's not a performance." But when the table was set and my dish was there, she'd scrape it clean and never say thank you. Or Mom's subtle sigh when I mentioned my promotion last spring. She said, "That's nice, but work isn't everything, you know." As if my success was a direct insult to her choices. And then I remembered last year's Christmas Eve. I'd stayed up until 3 a.m., baking gingerbread cookies from scratch because it was Dad's old recipe. Even though he'd been gone for years, making them felt like bringing him back to the table for a moment. I wrapped them in parchment paper, tied them with red twine, and drove 4 hours through sleet to get there. When I arrived, Mom took the cookies and set them in the laundry room. She said there wasn't room on the dessert table. I found them later that night, untouched, the twine still tied. Back then I told myself they were just distracted, busy, tired from hosting so many people. I gave them the benefit of every doubt because the alternative was unbearable. But lying there in the darks with the echo of, "We all agreed, you're not welcome," Still pulsing in my ears, I finally let the truth land. They hadn't just forgotten me. They had been erasing me, piece by piece, memory by memory, until I was nothing more than a line item in their budget, a mortgage payment on their spreadsheet, a silent benefactor funding their comfort. I sat up in bed, swung my legs over the side, and stared at my phone glowing on the nightstand. My reflection looked ghost-like in the black screen. I unlocked it and opened my banking app. The December mortgage payment sat there scheduled like clockwork. $1,368.27, set to auto-draft in 3 days. I scrolled back month by month, watching each payment tick backward, like a countdown of wasted love. 36 payments in total, over $48,000. For a house I didn't live in, for a family that didn't want me. I remembered when Mom first asked me to co-sign the mortgage. I was 26, still figuring out my own finances. But she called me crying after Dad passed, terrified she wouldn't qualify a loan. She said it's just for a year or two, baby, until I can refinance. I believed her, because she was my mother, because daughters are supposed to believe their mothers. But 3 years later, my name was still on the loan, my bank account still draining every month to keep their lights on their oven warm, their roof leak free. And in return, all they offered me was absence. I closed the app and sat there for a long time, elbows on my knees, palms pressed together like prayer. But I wasn't praying. I was remembering. Remembering every Christmas morning spent at their table watching them unwrap gifts I'd shipped overnight because I was too busy working to drive down in time. Remembering how those gifts always ended up tagged from all of us in the family photo albums, as if my effort had been redistributed into the collective and my name deleted. Remembering the baby shower I paid for 2 years ago when Carlin's sister-in-law opened my handmade quilt and said, "Wow, who bought this?" And Carlin shrugged and said, "It doesn't matter, we all pitched in." Remembering Mom's birthday dinner last June, when I called in takeout from her favorite Italian place, paid the $300 bill, and she told everyone later it was a gift from the family. Remembering how I kept giving quietly, invisibly, believing that one day they'd see me, that one day the net would hold me too. But that night, staring at the silent shadows of my room, I finally understood. They never planned to catch me. They just planned to keep taking, because that's what convenience looks like when disguised as love. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. What I felt was quieter and sharper than either of those things. It was clarity, cold, clean clarity. They had erased me from their hearts long before they erased me from the Christmas table. And I had let them, because I thought loyalty meant silence, because I thought love meant staying. That was the night I realized I didn't need to scream to leave. I didn't need to make a scene. All I needed to do was wake up the next morning and decide if I wasn't welcome at their table, I would stop paying for their feast. And in that quiet decision, something long dead in me flickered back to life. The next morning, I woke up before my alarm. The winter sun hadn't even risen yet, and my apartment was quiet, except for the faint hum of the radiator. I wrapped myself in a blanket and sat at my kitchen table staring at my laptop. Part of me still clung to hope, desperate and trembling. Maybe they'd sent something overnight. Maybe there was an email buried in my spam folder with a subject line like Christmas plans or menu ideas or who's bringing dessert. So I opened my inbox. The blue glow of the screen felt cold against my face. I searched for Christmas holiday dinner plans. Nothing. I checked my spam folder. Empty. I refreshed my inbox again. Still nothing. A lump formed in my throat, sharp and humiliating. I closed my eyes and tried to breathe through it. I told myself maybe they just hadn't finalized plans yet. Maybe they were waiting to see who could come before sending out the details. Maybe they'd text me later. But deep down, I already knew. The silence wasn't accidental. It was orchestrated. My coffee had gone cold by the time I finally moved. I opened a new tab and pulled up our family shared drive. Every year we uploaded spreadsheets with grocery lists, gift registries, playlists, and travel schedules. Carlin always made a ridiculous ranking system for who brought the most useful dish, as if stuffing and green beans were competing in the Olympics. I hated those spreadsheets, but I still checked them religiously because it meant I was part of something, no matter how petty it felt. But when the page loaded, the folder was gone. At first, I thought it was a glitch. I refreshed. I searched by name. Nothing. I clicked an old invite link from last year. Access denied. A chill ran down my arms colder than the draft leaking through my window. I didn't panic. Not right away. I told myself maybe they'd made a new folder. Maybe they were reorganizing. But the longer I sat there clicking and re-clicking the same broken links, the quieter my thoughts became. Like my mind was preparing me for what my heart already knew. I picked up my phone and texted Carlin. "Hey, did you take down the family folder? I watched the little gray delivered check mark appear." I waited. 5 minutes. 10. 38 minutes later, my phone buzzed. My heart jumped in my chest, but it wasn't Carlin. It was Mom. Her message read, "I figured you'd be busy this year. Don't stress about Christmas." I read it twice, 3 times. Each word cut deeper because of what it didn't say. "No, how are you? No, we missed you last year. No, are you okay?" Just a line meant to sound caring, but felt like a lock clicking shut behind me. I didn't reply. I took a screenshot instead, saving it like evidence in a trial I hadn't realized was underway. That afternoon, I sat in my living room, the silence pressing down on me so heavily, it felt physical. I stared at my Christmas decorations still in their plastic tub by the door. I hadn't put them up yet. I'd been waiting for the email, waiting to see if I was going home for the holidays. But now, looking at the tangle of red and gold ribbons, the strings of twinkle lights, I realized there was no home to go to anymore. Something inside me felt like it was breaking, but not in a shattering way. It felt like a clean snap, like a branch under too much ice, finally giving way under the weight. There was no drama in it, just inevitability. I picked up my laptop again and opened my banking app. The mortgage payment sat there scheduled to draft in 3 days, $1,368.37, or same as every month. I clicked into the payment history. Month after month, year after year. Every transaction tagged Crane June Property, Asheville, NC. I scrolled further back to the day Mom called me crying, asking me to co-sign. I remembered standing in the frozen foods aisle holding a bag of peas, phone pressed to my ear while she sobbed about how she couldn't qualify a loan. "It's just temporary, baby," she'd said. "Just until I can refinance." Her voice had been so small and desperate. I'd felt needed, loved, important. I believed her. 3 years later, I was still paying for that house, still covering the heat they gathered around the roof they decorated with twinkling lights, the kitchen they cooked in, while planning Christmas dinners I wasn't invited to attend. My hands hovered over the keyboard. For a moment, anger flared hot in my chest, rising fast like bile. I imagined typing out a furious text to Mom demanding to know why. I imagined calling Carlin and screaming down the line, telling her exactly what I thought of her silent vote to erase me. But the anger fizzled out just as quickly as it came, leaving only exhaustion in its wake. Instead, I opened my banking settings and scrolled down to recurring payments. I paused my thumb over the cancel auto payment button. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. Not because I couldn't afford it, but because for the first time I asked myself a question. I'd been too afraid to speak aloud. Why am I paying for a life I'm not allowed to live in? That question didn't feel like rebellion. It felt like truth, heavy and quiet and undeniable. I didn't cancel the payment. Not that day. That day I just sat there staring at the button, feeling the weight of years settle into my bones. But something inside me shifted. Something deep and foundational. A realization that love wasn't supposed to cost this much. That loyalty wasn't meant to be measured in dollars and silence. That day I made a decision. I wouldn't scream. I wouldn't beg. I wouldn't even warn them. If I wasn't welcome at their table, I would stop paying for their feast. And for the first time in years, I felt a flicker of something close to peace. The next morning, I woke up with a dull ache behind my eyes like grief had settled there overnight. I sat on the edge of my bed for a long time listening to the radiator clicking in the quiet, wondering how many mornings I'd started like this, bracing myself before facing the truth. After making coffee, I opened my laptop and instinctively clicked into the family shared drive. Every year around this time, the folder lit up with activity grocery lists, Christmas playlists, gift registries, travel schedules, and Carlin's annual spreadsheet, ranking everyone's contributions to dinner. It always annoyed me how she treated Thanksgiving and Christmas like competitive potlucks. But looking back, at least it meant I was still counted. Still there. But when the page loaded that morning, I was met with an empty screen. No folders, no files, nothing. I blinked, confused. Maybe I was signed into the wrong account. I logged out and back in. Still nothing. I searched Christmas dinner 2025. No results. My chest tightened. I scrolled through old email links, clicked on one labeled Family Folder Gift Ideas. A new page popped up. Access denied. My hand trembled slightly on the trackpad. I clicked another link. Access denied. Again. Access denied. It didn't feel like a glitch. It felt deliberate. For a few minutes, I just sat there staring at the screen. The emptiness of it felt louder than any insult. I tried to imagine them having a conversation about it, deciding together to block me out. The thought made my stomach twist. I picked up my phone and texted Carlin. "Hey, did you take down the family folder I watched the message deliver?" Minutes ticked by. 10 minutes, 20. 38 minutes later, a reply came through, but it wasn't from Carlin. It was from Mom. "I figured you'd be busy this year. Don't stress about Christmas." I read it twice. The words sounded soft on the surface, but underneath there was nothing but cold finality. "No, how are you? No, we miss you." Just a polite lock clicking shut. I didn't respond. I took a screenshot instead, saving it in a folder I'd created that morning called Exit Plan, because that's what it was becoming. An exit. Quiet. Unannounced. But final. Later that afternoon, I tried one last time. I opened the Google Drive app on my phone, scrolling through the shared files. Usually by mid-December, there'd be subfolders labeled Dinner Menu Gift Exchange Rules, decorations and photos for cards. This year, nothing. Like the entire system had been wiped clean of my access. I searched Christmas playlist thinking, maybe I could at least listen to the music they'd picked this year, pretend I was there in spirit. The search bar flickered before returning the same 2 words. No results. My eyes burned. Not from tears I hadn't cried in days, but from the kind of ache that comes when you stare too long into something empty, hoping it will fill itself. I scrolled back through old files from previous years. There I was in thumbnails holding deviled eggs in 2022, arranging candles in 2021, writing out place cards in 2020. I clicked each photo open one by one. My smile looked tired in all of them. I didn't realize how tired until now. When I reached the end of the archive, the screen went black for a second. before refreshing back to no shared folders. I sat back in my chair and exhaled slowly. My coffee had gone cold again. I pressed the mug to my cheek, letting the chill ground me. That evening, I didn't turn on any Christmas lights. I left the tub of decorations by the front door unopened. Instead, I pulled up my budgeting spreadsheet. December's mortgage payment sat there at the top, $1,368.27, due in 2 days. My eyes drifted down the page to the notes I'd written to myself months ago. Continue payments until March. Reassess after bonus hits. Back then, reassess meant reviewing my savings planning. A refinance mapping out long-term goals to keep supporting them. But now reading it again, reassess, meant something else entirely. I highlighted the cell in yellow. Then I opened a blank document and titled it, Exit Plan, December 2025. Line by line, I started filling it out. Mortgage payment history, 36 months. Utilities, gas, electric, internet. Property taxes, auto paid. House repairs, oven, roof leak. Basement mold treatment, grocery reimbursements never submitted. Gifts, Christmas, birthdays, baby showers. As I typed, a memory surfaced. Last summer, Mom called me about a leak in the laundry room ceiling. She was frantic, saying mold would ruin the entire drywall. I'd wired her $620 within the hour. She texted back a thumbs up emoji. No, thank you, just... At the time, I didn't think twice. That's what daughters do, right? Step in. Fix it. Cover the cracks. But now, sitting in my dim apartment with only the glow of my laptop screen, I realized something that tightened my throat. They didn't keep me around because they loved me. They kept me around because I was useful, because I was quiet, because I never asked for anything in return. I paused, staring at the blinking cursor. The hum of the refrigerator filled the silence. I reached for my phone and scrolled to the family group chat. The name had been changed to The Real Ones. My name wasn't on the member list anymore. I checked another thread, the one labeled Holiday Hysteria. Gone. Archived somewhere I couldn't access. It was like being erased from a family tree. Branch cut clean off. I didn't scream. I didn't text them demanding an explanation. I just saved every screenshot, every receipt, every file into the exit plan folder. Because I knew this was no longer about belonging. It was about documenting reality before they rewrote it, without me. I sat there for a long time listening to my apartment settle around me. The radiator hissed. Pipes knocked in the walls. Outside, the sky turned black and heavy with coming snow. And in that silence, I whispered to myself, if I'm not welcome in their future, I will stop paying for their present. That was the night I decided. No announcements, no confrontations. Just a quiet, irreversible exit. The kind that leaves a hole they didn't know existed until the lights go out and they realize who'd been keeping them on all along. Last Christmas feels like a lifetime ago now. But at the time, I didn't realize it was the beginning of the end. I still believed I belonged, even if only on the edges. I remember I woke up before dawn that morning. My apartment was freezing because the heat had gone out again. I wrapped myself in 3 sweaters and thick socks, then started baking cookies at 3 a.m. The oven warmed the kitchen while I mixed the dough, rolled it out, pressed each gingerbread man with careful precision. It was Dad's recipe. He used to hum while baking them off-key, his voice blending with the smell of cinnamon and molasses. Baking them felt like bringing him back for a few hours. I packaged them carefully in parchment paper and red twine, then loaded gifts into my car. A hand-knit scarf for Mom in the exact dusty rose shade she used to wear when she taught 3rd grade, a bracelet for Carlin she'd admired casually back in May, a coffee grinder for Byron, because he complained mine ground too coarse when he visited, and deviled eggs in a Tupperware container, my quiet tradition. No one ever requested them, but the tray always came back scraped clean. The drive to Asheville was foggy roads, slick with black ice. I drove slow, knuckles white against the steering wheel, anxiety fluttering in my chest. Not about the roads, about being late. My last client call the night before had run over. I'd gotten home at 8 p.m., exhausted but determined to show up with everything prepared. I wanted them to see I was trying, that I was good, that I was enough. I pulled into Mom's driveway just after 11 a.m. The house was already full. Cars lined the street, parked haphazardly in the grass. Christmas lights blinked around the porch, gold and white classic, the kind Mom loved. For a second, as I gathered the gifts in my arms, my chest filled with warmth. Maybe this year would be different. Maybe walking in with cookies still warm from the oven would earn me a smile, a thank you, even a hug. But when I opened the front door, the smell of turkey and rosemary and sweet potatoes hit me first. Laughter poured out from the dining room. Every chair was full. I paused in the entryway, balancing boxes and Tupperware, my scarf slipping from my elbow. No one looked up. I stood there half in half, out waiting. Finally, Mom turned from the kitchen sink, wiping her hands on a dish towel. Her eyes flickered over me before landing back on the plates she was rinsing. "Oh," she said flatly. "You're here." I forced a smile. "Yeah. Sorry I'm late." "Roads were bad." She didn't answer, just turned back to the dishes. I set down the gifts in the corner of the living room, arranging them neatly under the tree. It was tall and full branches, heavy with gold ornaments. I'd ordered it for her online last year because she'd complained the local lots were overpriced. Seeing it there lit up and beautiful felt like an echo of pride and a reminder of my invisibility. I carried the tray of deviled eggs into the kitchen. Carlin was carving the turkey, her husband plating mashed potatoes. Neither of them looked up. I squeezed into the far corner by the window, set down my eggs and stepped back. "Look who finally decided to show up," someone mumbled behind me. I didn't even turn to see who it was. "Doesn't matter." They all laughed. It rolled through the kitchen like warm butter over bread, familiar, dismissive. My chest tightened, but I swallowed it down. I reached for a paper plate and plastic fork, but there were no napkins left. I stood at the counter scooping cold green beans and sweet potato casserole onto my plate, trying not to spill anything on my dress pants. My feet ached from the drive. My shoulders burned from carrying the gifts. But none of that mattered. Not there. For a moment, I glanced over at the dining table. Every chair was filled. People squeezed shoulder to shoulder, passing bread baskets and pouring gravy, laughing and clinking glasses. There wasn't a place set for me. Not an empty chair pulled out waiting. I told myself maybe they just hadn't expected me so soon. Maybe someone would offer to swap seats later. But no one did. I stood there leaning against the cold granite counter, balancing my paper plate, and tried to swallow past the lump in my throat. The sound of forks scraping china filled the silence between my ears. That was last Christmas. And back then, I told myself it wasn't intentional. People get busy. Holiday plans shift. Maybe they just forgot I didn't eat pork. Maybe they were too distracted to notice I was standing alone in the kitchen. Maybe they were tired. Maybe they just forgot. I left early that day before dessert. I told Mom I had work to finish, but really I just couldn't stand there another hour feeling like a ghost haunting my own family. Driving back home through the dark, I remember gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles ached. I tried not to cry because tears blurred the road, and I couldn't afford to crash. I pulled into my apartment complex around 9 p.m., carried my empty Tupperware upstairs and placed it in the sink. I didn't wash it that night. I just stood there staring at the faint yellow yolk stains, thinking, maybe next year will be better. But sitting here now, 1 year later, seeing their silence solidify into deliberate erasure, I realized something I couldn't let myself believe back then. They hadn't forgotten me last Christmas. They had already started deleting me, quietly, collectively, with every missed napkin, every unacknowledged dish, every empty chair. Because forgetting someone is an accident, erasing them is a choice, and last Christmas, they chose. It was later that week, sitting alone in my apartment with only the hum of the fridge keeping me company, when the financial reality began to settle into my bones like winter chill. I opened my budgeting spreadsheet, the same file I'd kept updated for years. Every bill, every payment, every auto draft, carefully logged. The December mortgage payment sat at the top, $1.368 Bounty are due in 2 days. I hovered my cursor over the cell and highlighted it in yellow. My chest tightened. I scrolled back month by month, November, October, September. Every payment the same, each one tagged Crane June Property, Asheville, NC. My mother's house. The house she was celebrating Christmas in this year. The house I wasn't welcome to enter. I clicked into the notes section and read the comment I'd left myself 3 years ago, co-signed to help Mom qualify. Temporary support until refinancing, estimated 12-18 months. I remembered that day vividly. I'd been standing in the freezer aisle at Trader Joe's, staring at frozen peas, when Mom called me crying. She said the bank wouldn't approve her mortgage application alone. She was short by a few thousand in income verification. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "I don't want to lose the house, baby. It's all I have left of your father." I didn't even think twice. I said yes before she finished the sentence. She promised it would just be for a year, maybe 2, until she could refinance under her own name. She called me her lifesaver, her rock, her good girl. And God, did I want to be that for her. But here we were, 36 payments later, and nothing had changed, except everything had. My eyes scanned down the spreadsheet past mortgage payments to utility bills, gas, electric, internet, all still on my accounts, auto-paid monthly. I never switched them back because Mom said it was too complicated with the companies. And besides, you're so good at managing these things. Property taxes paid directly from my checking every spring. Homeowner's insurance annual payment withdrawn each February. Even the new oven installed 2 summers ago, $645. I'd covered that too. Line after line, payment after payment. The truth lay bare in black and white. I wasn't just helping. I was carrying. Quietly. Completely. And without complaint. Because somewhere along the way I'd come to believe my value to them was tied to what I could provide. My usefulness was my only security, my only tether to their love. And they knew it. I remembered last spring when Carlin called me panicked. Mom needed a roof repair after a storm and insurance wouldn't cover it all. Without hesitation, I wired $2,000 to the contractor. Carlin texted back, "Handled. No, thank you." Just handled. Like I was an employee completing a task. Or last Christmas when Mom called and said the heating bill had spiked and she didn't know how to pay it before guests arrived. I logged into my app and paid it in full. She replied with a voice note that said, "Bless you, baby," in that distracted tone she used when reading emails while talking to me. I saved it anyway. Back then, her blessing still felt like currency I needed to collect. But now, sitting there in my quiet apartment, coffee cold beside me, I realized the truth. They didn't love me because I was helpful. They loved my help. There's a difference, a sharp, cruel difference. If I stopped paying, if I stopped wiring money, if I stopped auto-covering emergencies before they became real emergencies, would they still call me? Would they still invite me? Would they still think of me at all? My stomach twisted as I let the answer settle in my chest. Heavy, immovable. No, they wouldn't. I scrolled back further in the spreadsheet, all the way to my down payment assistance in July 2019. $8,400 transferred directly from my savings to her closing costs. At the time, Mom had promised to put my name on the deed once she refinanced. Said it casually while we stood in the baking aisle picking out cake flour. You know, just so it's fair if anything ever happens to me. I believed her. Of course I did. She was my mother. But later, when I asked for the paperwork, she laughed softly and said, "Don't be silly. It's just a house. You'll get everything anyway when I'm gone." I'd nodded, swallowing the tightness in my throat, pretending her words were comforting instead of chilling. Now, staring at the numbers, I saw it for what it was. Not kindness, not practicality, control. Because if my name was never on the title, I had no claim, no ownership, just obligation, just bills, just silent responsibility. I closed the spreadsheet and leaned back in my chair, feeling the weight of 3 years of quiet sacrifice pressing down on my ribs. They hadn't just excluded me from Christmas. They'd excluded me from the family. Long before that, Christmas was just the first time they said it out loud. But financially, emotionally, spiritually, I'd been paying for a place I was never allowed to inhabit. A memory surfaced, then sharp and uninvited. Carlen's voice during Thanksgiving cleanup 2 years ago, when I offered to Venmo her for extra groceries I'd asked her to pick up. She laughed and said, "Don't worry about it. You pay for everything else anyway." I'd laughed back then. I thought she meant it as a compliment. Now I heard the truth in her words. They saw me as a bank account, an insurance policy, an open tab on their lives they never planned to close. And the worst part, I'd let them. Because I thought loyalty meant silence. Because I thought love was something you bought with enough giving. But that morning, sitting in my silent apartment with the snow beginning to fall outside my window, I felt something shift inside me. A flicker of clarity. Cold. Resolute. I whispered it aloud into the empty room, the words tasting like iron on my tongue. If I'm not welcome at their table, why am I paying for their feast? And in that quiet question, I felt a seed of something stronger than anger, stronger than grief. I felt the beginning of freedom. 2 days after I'd paused the mortgage payment in my banking app, just paused, not canceled. Not yet, I was standing in my kitchen putting away groceries when my phone buzzed on the counter. The screen lit up with a notification voicemail from Mom. My stomach twisted before I even touched it. I knew what it would say. I could already hear her voice in my mind, light and polite, like someone reading from a pre-approved script. I let the milk and celery sit on the counter and pressed play, holding the phone away from my ear as her words filled the quiet kitchen. "Hey, Lila. Just calling to check in. The family talked and, well, we just think it might be easier if you don't come this year. It's nothing personal." We all agreed. You know how things get. Hope you're staying busy. Okay, bye now. I stood there, plastic grocery bag still looped around my wrist, the bottle of wine I'd bought rolling gently across the counter. I replayed it twice. Not because I didn't understand it the first time, but because I needed to hear the tone. That flat, slightly strained politeness, like she was trying to sound caring without letting any real feeling slip through. We all agreed. Not I feel. Not I wish it were different. Just, we all agreed. A verdict, not a conversation. I didn't cry. I didn't drop the groceries. I set the bag down slowly, took off my coat, and hit save on the voicemail. Then I opened my gallery app and scrolled back to screenshots I'd been quietly collecting. The empty family drive, the group chat I was removed from, the mortgage payments, the tax bills. Line after line of evidence that what I felt wasn't paranoia. It was fact. That evening I lay in bed staring at the ceiling phone face down on my chest. The apartment was silent except for the ticking of the clock above my bedroom door. I wasn't crying. I'd run out of tears weeks ago. What I felt now was something colder, cleaner, like glass snapping underfoot. I thought about Christmas last year again, the tray of deviled eggs sitting untouched in the laundry room, my gift stacked in the corner with no tags, the empty chair that never appeared, and now this voicemail, this final erasure, the confirmation that they'd voted, and I had lost. The next morning I woke to a new notification, a text from Carlin. "You always made things tense. Honestly, it's better this way." A second later, another message came through like a footnote she'd been waiting years to write. "You were never really good at being part of this family." I stared at the words on my phone screen for a long time. Read them twice. 3 times. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. For a split second, I imagined replying, telling her about every bill I'd paid, every late-night grocery run to cover a party they never invited me to plan, every mortgage payment that kept the lights on so she could host her Pinterest-perfect dinners. I imagined telling her about the exhaustion, the bone-deep loneliness of being needed but never loved. But I didn't write any of that. I didn't write anything. Instead, I took a screenshot and saved it to my exit plan folder, because I'd realized something important. You don't have to scream when someone's erasing you. Whispered edits work just as well. Later that day, I opened my old group texts. The chat with Carlin and my 2 cousins had been renamed The Real Ones. My name wasn't listed in the members anymore. I clicked another thread from last year titled, "Holiday Hysteria." Gone. Not deleted, just moved somewhere I couldn't reach. I scrolled through my inbox searching for old calendar invites, family reminders, even Carlin's passive-aggressive messages like, "Don't forget to label your serving dish." None of them were there. It was like I'd been scrubbed clean from their December. They hadn't just forgotten me. They had deleted me. Carefully, deliberately. Like dusting off an old picture frame before putting someone else's photo inside. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table with a bowl of reheated pozole, was staring at the wall across from me. The room felt colder than usual, but I didn't mind. Cold felt honest. Cold didn't lie. Halfway through dinner, my phone buzzed again. A memory notification from 3 years ago. A photo of Christmas gifts stacked on my office floor, wrapped in gold paper with red ribbons. I'd stayed late at work to afford those presents, paid for overnight shipping to get them there on time. In the photos Mom posted that year, the tags had been changed to "From all of us." Not one person corrected it. Not one thanked me. That memory settled over me like a snowfall, soft, silent, suffocating. I stood up, walked to the window and stared out at the street below. Across the way, a couple was finishing their Christmas lights white and gold, just like Mom used to love. I watched them for a long time, feeling nothing and everything, all at once. When I turned back to my apartment, the emptiness felt clean, like a room after guests have left quiet and honest again. I whispered aloud into the darkness, "If they can erase me so easily, why did I ever fight to stay visible?" That night before bed, I opened my banking app one more time. The mortgage payment sat there, paused but not canceled. My thumb hovered over cancel auto payment. I didn't click it yet. But for the first time, I wasn't afraid of what would happen if I did, because I knew the lights might go out for them. But for me, canceling that payment wouldn't plunge me into darkness. It would set me free. The day after Carlin's text, I woke up before dawn. My apartment was silent except for the hum of the fridge. I sat on the edge of my bed staring into the dim light, feeling calm, not peaceful. Just calm like a lake frozen over. Underneath, something was shifting. I made coffee, opened my laptop, and clicked into the exit plan folder. Screenshot after screenshot mortgage payments, utility bills, Venmo transfers for groceries, oven repairs, roof leaks down payments, proof of every quiet sacrifice. I organized them into neat folders, mortgage, utilities, repairs, gifts. Because I knew when the story got rewritten, I'd need the truth documented. They could call me ungrateful, crazy, but they wouldn't call me a liar. That afternoon, I opened the family utilities account still in my name after all these years. I clicked cancel service on each one. Electric, gas, internet. I forwarded the confirmations to myself and CC'd my backup email. Not out of revenge, out of clarity. Let them figure out how to keep the lights on. Let them remember the warmth was never free. Later, I scrolled through Facebook, half distracted, when a new post appeared from Kayla, my youngest cousin. It was a group selfie, 12 faces, crammed around Mom's dining table, smiling wide. Carlin sat at the center holding a glass of wine. Mom stood behind her hand, resting on her shoulder, like she was passing down a crown. The caption read, "Doing what's best for the whole family isn't always easy, but it's worth it." My chest went cold. I zoomed in, scanning every chair, every place, setting full. The plates, the chargers, the gold-rimmed glasses I'd bought for Mom last year because hers were chipped. No seat left for me. I read the caption again. Doing what's best. My stomach tightened as I scrolled to the comments. Carlin had written, "Hard but necessary vote. Proud of everyone for showing up. Vote." The word punched the air from my lungs. They hadn't forgotten me. They had voted me out, quietly, deliberately, without hesitation. I set my phone down and stared at the floor for a long time. All the payments, all the bills, all the silent carrying. And this was their gratitude erasure. For a moment, I imagined texting Carlin, telling her about the mortgage payment still scheduled in my banking app, about the utility bills she never saw about, the every, "Don't worry, I got it," they relied on. But I didn't. Instead, I whispered into the empty room. They think love means I'll keep paying no matter how invisible I become. I picked up my phone, opened my banking app, and hovered my thumb over cancel auto payment. Not today, I thought. Today isn't for action. Today is for knowing. Because that vote wasn't the end. It was the beginning. The beginning of me choosing myself. Quietly, deliberately, irrevocably. That night, after seeing the hard but necessary vote post, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the dark ceiling, feeling my heartbeat echo in my throat. They voted me out, like I was a problem to solve, a mess to clean up. And in their silence, I finally saw them clearly. At 2 a.m., I got out of bed and walked barefoot to my desk. The wood was cold against my skin. I opened my laptop and clicked into the exit plan folder. The evidence was all there. Mortgage payments, utility bills, Venmo transfers, grocery reimbursements, never claimed roof repairs, oven replacements. Years of quiet carrying. Years of paying for a life I wasn't allowed to live in. I opened a new document and titled it, Statement of Financial Support, 2019 Present. Line by line, I laid it out. Mortgage payments, $1,368, 27, 36 months. Down payment assistance, $8,400. Roof repair, $2,000. Oven replacement, $645. Utilities, electric, gas, internet monthly totals. Grocery transfers, $120 or $400 each holiday. Property taxes, annual payments. Each dollar an unacknowledged tether binding me to a family that never intended to hold me. Then I opened my email. I addressed it to 3 people: Byron's boss at the bank, the charity board director who printed the potluck article, calling Mom the generous host, and a local news editor I'd worked with years ago during a fundraiser. No dramatic subject line. Just financial clarification, Crane June property. I attached the document the audio clip Tamsin had sent me. Mom saying she's not really family. She's just convenient. Carlin laughing, Byron saying, "Keep her on the papers. No need to rock the boat. I didn't write a manifesto. I didn't write threats. Just facts. Truth they couldn't edit out." My fingers hovered over send. For a second, guilt twisted in my gut. I could hear Mom's voice. "Why are you doing this to us?" But then I heard my own voice, small and tired. "Why did you do this to me?" I hit send. The next day, the reactions began dripping in like a leaky faucet. The charity website updated their credits, removing Mom's name from the host acknowledgements. Tamsin texted, "They're scrambling. Carlin's accusing me of betrayal. Byron's been suspended while they investigate." I read her message and replied simply, "I didn't declare war. I declared independence." An hour later, an email arrived with the subject line, "Urgent mortgage inquiry response required." I didn't open it right away. Instead, I stood up, walked to my kitchen, and poured a glass of water. The sun streamed through the window, catching flecks of dust in the air. It looked beautiful, honest. When I sat back down, I opened the email. The bank wanted clarification on payment responsibility and documentation for the mortgage transfer. I felt a flicker of relief. This was it, the next step out. That evening, my phone buzzed with a text from Carlin. "You're destroying everything Mom built." I laughed. A short, bitter sound that didn't even reach my chest. I hadn't destroyed anything. I just unplugged it. It wasn't my fault they never learned how to keep the lights on without me. Then Mom texted, "How could you humiliate me like this? We're still your family. Still." As if there was ever a pause between who they pretended to be and what they actually were. I didn't respond. I didn't owe them closure. Because what they wanted wasn't forgiveness. It was silence. The same silence they demanded from me for years. And I was done giving it. That night before bed, I lit a candle in my kitchen. Not for atmosphere, but as a reminder that I could make light too. That my space was warm even when theirs had gone cold. As the flame flickered against the dark window, I whispered, "This isn't revenge. This is reality. And for once, it's mine." And in that quiet moment, I felt something settle in my chest that I hadn't felt in years. Peace. The next morning, I woke before dawn. The world outside was still dark, but a faint gray light was gathering at the edges of the sky. I sat on the edge of my bed, feeling the cold floor under my feet, and whispered to myself, "Today is the day." I made coffee and drank it slowly, letting the warmth settle into my chest. Then I opened my laptop and logged into my bank account. The mortgage payment sat there, paused. My thumb hovered over cancel auto payment. This time I didn't hesitate. I clicked cancel. The confirmation popped up. Recurring payment canceled successfully. I didn't smile. I didn't cry. I just closed the window and let the quiet wash over me. Then I opened the utility accounts. Electric, gas, internet, homeowners insurance, all still under my name. One by one, I canceled each service. The confirmation numbers lined up neatly in my inbox like a final roll call of my sacrifices. I forwarded each email to myself, then CC'd them to my backup address. I wasn't being petty. I was being clean. Because someday, when they tried to rewrite the story, I wanted the truth preserved. That afternoon, I walked 2 blocks to the bank. The teller smiled brightly as I handed her the notarized mortgage transfer form. "I'd like to formally remove myself as co-signer," I said calmly. She blinked, fingers hovering over her keyboard. "You understand this removes your financial responsibility and any claim to the property. I understand better than anyone." I said signing where she pointed. When it was done, I stepped out onto the sidewalk. The wind cut through my coat, but I didn't flinch. I stood there for a moment, breathing in the cold December air, feeling it sharpen the edges of my grief into something clearer, freedom. I didn't text them to let them know. I owed them nothing. They'd notice soon enough when the bills stopped auto-paying, and the mortgage statements came addressed only to Mom. That evening, I packed up the last of the holiday decorations I'd never bothered to hang. The gold ribbon, the wreaths, the ornaments. I boxed them neatly and labeled the container for donation. Because I didn't need reminders of a Christmas that never belonged to me. Before bed, I made soup from scratch. The smell of simmering broth filled my small apartment. I curled up on the couch with my bowl in my lap, staring out the window at the snow beginning to fall. Each flake drifted past the glass, slow and silent, like tiny scraps of forgiveness. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel angry. What I felt was quieter than both, like stepping out of a storm and realizing you'd been soaked for years without noticing. My phone buzzed around 9 p.m., a text from Tamsin. They're asking if you're coming back next year. I read it twice, then typed back, they should worry more about how they'll keep the lights on. No emojis, no softening. Some truths stand best on their own. I set my phone down, turned off the lamp, and sat there in the quiet dark of my apartment. It wasn't emptiness. It was space. For once, I didn't feel like I was disappearing. I felt like I was becoming. Because leaving isn't always a protest. Sometimes it's just finally telling the truth with your absence. And as I closed my eyes to sleep, I felt it settle deep in my bones. I wasn't walking away from them. I was walking back to myself. Christmas morning came quietly. No alarms, no texts, no invitations waiting in my inbox. I woke to the soft gray light of dawn filtering through my curtains. For a moment, I just lay there listening to the hum of my apartment. No laughter drifting up from a crowded kitchen. No clatter of dishes or forced conversations. Just quiet. And for the first time in years, the quiet didn't ache. It felt honest, clean. I brewed coffee slowly like a ritual and curled up on my couch with a blanket draped over my shoulders. Outside, snow fell in gentle waves dusting the street in white. I sipped my coffee and let the silence settle around me like a soft coat. I thought about them, about Mom, about Carlin, about every holiday I'd spent trying to prove I was good enough to keep my seat at their table. All those years I thought love was something you bought with sacrifice. That belonging was earned through quiet endurance. But sitting there watching the snow gather on the windowsill, I realized something I wished I'd known so much sooner. You don't need a seat at someone else's table to know your worth. You can build your own. Even if you sit there alone at first, it's still yours, and that's enough. Later that morning, I opened my laptop and deleted the exit plan folder. I didn't need it anymore. The evidence wasn't what set me free. My choice did. I spent the afternoon cooking a real breakfast egg sourdough toast, roasted tomatoes, crispy bacon. I plated it beautifully just for me. Because I deserved beauty even without an audience to witness it. As I ate, my phone buzzed with a text from Tamsin. Grandma asked if you're okay. Should I tell her the truth? I stared at the message, feeling a quiet warmth bloom in my chest. I typed back, tell her I'm more than okay. Tell her I'm finally free. She didn't reply, and I didn't need her to. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't speaking to be heard. I was speaking because it was true. That evening, I walked down to the corner store and bought myself flowers, pale pink tulips. I brought them home, trimmed the stems, and set them in a glass jar on my kitchen table. They brightened the room with their silent, gentle beauty. Standing there looking at them, I whispered, "This is my table now. No one could vote me out of it. No one could erase my place here, because it was mine. built with my own hands, lit with my own light. I know now that leaving isn't giving up. It's coming home to yourself. It's choosing peace over proving your worth to people committed to misunderstanding you. If you're reading this, if you've ever felt like the outsider in your own family, if you've spent your life buying love with silent sacrifice, I want you to hear me. You're not difficult. You're not broken. You're just done being diminished. Sometimes the bravest thing you'll ever do is walk away from a table that taught you to hate your own hunger. And sometimes in that quiet emptiness, you find something you never expected yourself. This isn't a goodbye. This is a beginning. Because peace isn't the absence of pain. It's the presence of truth. And today, I choose truth. And that is enough. A year passed after I walked away. 12 months of quiet mornings and silent evenings of learning how to fill my own spaces without apology. At first, it felt empty, like I'd stepped off a moving train and the world kept speeding by without me. But over time, the stillness softened, became gentle, became mine. I spent weekends at farmers' markets wandering aisles of fresh flowers and handmade pottery. I started baking again, not for a family table that never saved me a seat, but for neighbors, for co-workers, for myself. I planted herbs on my windowsill, basil, rosemary, mint. Watching them grow felt like proof that I could nurture life without being drained by it. And then one Saturday morning I met him. I was standing in line at the coffee shop near my apartment, hair pulled back sweater sleeves, pushed up, scrolling mindlessly through my phone. When I looked up, he was there. Soft brown eyes, warm, smile a little crooked. The kind of smile that makes your chest loosen before your mind catches up. He said, "Hey, I think you dropped this," and held out a folded grocery list I hadn't even realized slipped from my tote. I laughed, embarrassed, and thanked him. We chatted for a minute. He asked about the sourdough I planned to bake that afternoon. I asked about the book tucked under his arm, some history of Appalachian migration patterns. I thought about Tamsin and smiled. Before I left, he asked if he could take me to dinner. His voice was gentle, almost shy. I said yes. Dinner turned into coffee the next morning, which turned into a walk along the river trail later that week, which turned into long phone calls that stretched past midnight, our voices weaving stories into each other's silences. He didn't flinch when I told him about my family, about Christmas, about how I'd paid for love and found only emptiness. He didn't offer pity. He just listened, eyes steady, fingers brushing mine across the table. And when I finished speaking, he squeezed my hand and said, "You never deserved that. You deserved to be chosen. Chosen. Not needed. Not tolerated. Chosen." Months passed and the snow melted into spring. We planted tomatoes and snap peas on my balcony, his hands stained with potting soil, his laughter echoing through my small apartment. In July, we went to Asheville together. I drove past the house I used to pay for. It still stood quiet and unremarkable in the humid summer air. I didn't feel anger looking at it. I didn't feel sadness. I felt nothing. And nothing felt like freedom. That night back at the Airbnb, he held me close and whispered, "I hope you know you're home now. Wherever you are, that's home." In October, he knelt on our kitchen floor, flour dusting his jeans, and asked me to marry him. There was no crowd, no family watching, no curated photos. Just us. Just truth. Just love. We married quietly in a park under a canopy of gold and red leaves. Tamsin was there standing beside me in a deep green dress, her eyes shimmering with pride. As we said our vows, I felt something loosen in my chest, a knot that had been there for years unraveling thread by thread. This Christmas, we sat on our couch tree glowing softly in the corner, mugs of cocoa warming our hands. He reached over, tucked a stray hair behind my ear and said, "You built this. this warmth, this peace. I just get to live in it with you. And I realized he was right. I hadn't just found love. I'd created the life that allowed love to stay. A life rooted in choice, not obligation. In gentleness, not transaction. Outside, snow fell in slow, silent drifts. Inside, the house was filled with light. Our light. I know now that family isn't who shares your blood or your name on a spreadsheet. Family is who chooses you every day without conditions. Who sees you as a person, not a utility. Who sits beside you at a table you built together and says, "You are home." And that is love. The kind I never have to pay for with my silence. The kind that lets me rest at last, knowing I belong. A few weeks after Christmas, I sat by the window one quiet morning, watching the first pale gold light spill across the snow. The world outside was hushed soft with winter's breath. My husband was still asleep in the bedroom, his steady breathing drifting through the cracked door. The tulips he'd bought me last week were beginning to open on the table, their petals stretching toward the light, like small brave hands. I sipped my coffee slowly, feeling the warmth travel down to settle deep in my chest. For so many years, mornings felt heavy. I'd wake with my stomach twisted, scanning my phone for missed calls, group texts, reminders of the debts I owed just to remain in orbit around people who never saw me as more than convenience. But today there was only quiet, only peace. I thought about Mom, about Carlin, about the house I'd paid for that still stood back in Asheville. Bricks and shingles holding up their dinners, their traditions, their curated illusions. Did they think of me? Did Mom stand at the sink and glance at the backsplash I chose, remembering my name? Or had they edited me out completely, re-narrating their comfort to feel self-made? It didn't matter anymore, because sitting there, coffee steaming in my hands, I realized I no longer wanted an answer. Their remembering or forgetting had nothing to do with my living. Their silence was just that silence, and I was done letting it shape my worth. Later that afternoon, I bundled up in my thick coat and walked down to the park. The air was sharp and clean, the cold biting at my cheeks until they burned pink. I watched a young couple build a small snowman near the fountain, their laughter ringing. Clear against the stillness, a little girl ran past me chasing her dog, her boots crunching into fresh powder. She glanced up at me and grinned her joy, unburdened and bright. I smiled back, my chest filling with something I hadn't felt in years, hope. I found a bench near the path and sat for a while, breathing in the winter air. Each exhale drifted like fog before dissolving into the sky. I closed my eyes and whispered quietly to myself, "This is life, mine, unborrowed, unpaid for, unapologetic." When I got home, my husband was in the kitchen making lunch. He turned and smiled, eyes crinkling at the corners, and asked, "Good walk." I nodded, stepping into his arms. He kissed my forehead and said, "Welcome home. Home. Not a place I paid for to keep someone else warm. Not a chair I was allowed to occupy if I behaved. But a space built with my own hands, filled with my own light, shared with someone who saw me, truly saw me, and never asked me to shrink." That evening, I pulled out an old photo album I hadn't touched in years. Page after page of family birthdays, potlucks, holidays. My face half turned away, and most of them standing at the edge, hands full, always full. I flipped to the last page and slowly tore it out. Then another, and another, until the album felt thin, almost empty. I closed the cover and set it aside. I didn't throw it out. I didn't burn the photos. I just let them sit there, stripped of their power to define me, because my story wasn't trapped in those pages anymore. Before bed, I lit a candle on the kitchen counter. The flame flickered small and steady, casting warm light across the cabinets, and the clean sink. I stood there watching it dance for a moment, then whispered into the glow. "Thank you for carrying me this far, but I'll take it from here." Then I blew it out. The room fell into darkness for half a breath before the moonlight streamed back in through the window, silver and quiet, illuminating the countertops, the table, the tulips in their glass jar. That was the moment I understood I hadn't just built a new life. I'd built a new way of being alive. And for the first time in forever, I fell asleep that night, knowing I wouldn't wake up tomorrow, wondering if I was loved, because I was. By him, by this life, and finally by me.